Hello everyone, welcome to my channel about writing stuff. My name's Camille and today we're talking about plot. Again, a quick little update. So I recently received a R&R from an agent that I just adore and admire, and I'm so excited, and I totally just jumped headfirst into revisions. And I'm also still in the middle of my gender swap Tom Riddle origin storybook, and I also re-downloaded Candy Crush for God knows what reason. And then there is just so much good fan fiction and contemporary works just out that need to be read, and I'm just been so busy. So sorry, but that's my life. But anyways, enough about me and why I've been totally missing in action. Let's talk about plot. So I already have a video on plot, but this specifically is a method that I've used a few times that I've really gotten down to almost like a step-by-step basis, and it works for me, so I thought I'd share it with all of you. And, like everything else I talk about, plot for me really begins with character. For all of you outliners out there, I'm sure you pre-plan your characters, to a degree. You know them pretty well before you jump into the story, but for all of you discovery writers, you don't need to know a whole lot about your character going in with this method. The main thing that you need to know is who do you want your character to be at the beginning of the story, and then who do you want them to be at the end of the story. For The Hobbit, Bilbo starts out as a happy-go-lucky, content hobbit in his little hole in the ground, and then by the end of the story, he is now the type of person who is dissatisfied with a stable life. He wants adventure and excitement. He goes from being maybe a little unassuming to brave and courageous and all of these things. And that's what you need to know before going into the plot, because your character change will infer your plot this way, at least the way that I do it. But yeah, so who is your character at the beginning, and then who do you want them to be at the end? The second thing that you need to know for this story is your inciting incident. Again, you don't need to know the full plot points yet if you're a discovery writer. You just need to know that beginning, first kickoff point. What starts off the story? Is your main character given a magical ring that needs to be thrown into the fiery pits of Mordor to save everybody? Is your character accused of a murder? And does your character find out they're a wizard? Does your character find out that there's a treasure map? Whatever. What is the inciting incident? What kicks off the story? And then who is your character at the beginning of the story? Now, with this method, what I like to do is essentially plot backwards. Here's my analogy. Follow me along. You make a loaf of bread. The best way to get even slices of bread is to cut it down the middle, then cut that chunk down the middle, then cut the other chunks down the middle, etc., etc. And that's essentially what I'm doing with these plot points. I have the inciting incident. I know who my character is at the beginning. Now, I know who I want my character to be at the end of the story. So what would have to happen at the end of the story to change this character into this person? Basically, Frodo gets the ring into the fires of Mount Doom, so he transforms into this brave, stoic, courageous character, more so Sam. Harry finds out who the murderer is, so he finally has more self-confidence that perhaps, yes, he does belong in the wizarding world. There's a story that I read recently. Character clears their name of this murder they were accused of committing, so they are a stronger human being after having gone through that experience. On the flip side of that, it could be a negative ending where something horrible happens to this character and they start down like a decline. It's kind of like the anti-hero origin story or the villain origin story. Something happens to where the character starts out as a decent person and then ends as a terrible human being, so to say. So those are the two things you need to know. You need to know that beginning point of your story and the starting point of your character. and then you need to know the ending of your story, and then how your character changes, that pinnacle final change of the character. So you have your endpoints. Success. Now, we need to focus on the midpoint. The whole first half of the story for me is set up. It's rising action, building tension, introducing both or either the character and the reader to this new world, to these characters, to the struggle and the conflict and all these things. But then something happens at the midpoint. Something happens where the character goes from really just experiencing all of this stuff, absorbing the new world, absorbing the characters, absorbing what's happening to them. And then something happens to the character that transforms them from being what we call reactive to proactive. They get to a point in the middle of the story where they say, okay, I'm done. I'm done just letting things happen to me. I'm going to make things happen. So in the middle of the story, let's say, or, Lord of the Rings, Frodo decides to go off on his own. He understands that the ring is too tempting to the other characters, so he needs to take on this burden by himself and do it. So he switches from being reactive to proactive. In the first Harry Potter, it's, Harry has all these kind of clues, and like someone's trying to steal the Philosopher's Stone. It's like, well, why don't I try and find out who's doing it, who the bad guy is, etc. So you have your endpoints, and then you need a midpoint that takes that character and changes them from reactive to proactive. Now, at this point, I like to go back to the end of the story and say, okay, this is how I want the story to end, the climax or the final moment or whatever. So this is the end point. Now, what needs to happen between that and the midpoint to essentially earn me that ending, that explosive ending, that climax, that reveal, etc., etc. What needs to happen and that's the thing is, you need to foreshadow and set up enough before these plot points so that you've earned these exciting things you're throwing at the reader. It's, if you just throw in an explosion, it feels cheap and contrived. You need to earn the explosion. You need to have, like a car chase scene and people shooting at each other and the treasure almost being lost in the runaway scheme. And then you can have the explosion. Follow? So what needs to happen between that midpoint and the end point to earn you that end point? And then go back a step further. What needs to happen between the midpoint and that other point before the ending to earn you that point? So it's literally like cutting a loaf of bread. You have your inciting incident, you have your climax based around, who your character is at the beginning of the story and who you are in character to be at the end of the story. And then you fill in the middle. What's the midpoint? And then you go, okay, so what's the middle point between the midpoint and the ending? Okay, what's the middle point between the midpoint and the inciting incident? Yada, yada, yada. That way you start on this large scale, and then you start building into the smaller details and the other pieces. And then you start to, or at least for me, it starts to click in my mind, what do I need to have before this point to earn me that exciting next scene, or to earn me that exciting next plot point? And then from there, when I have all of the beats of, things that are actually happening, I also like to put in other little things. It's characters meeting for the first time, or relationships, or part of my character arc, how the character is changing, how this certain plot point affects this character, etc., etc. And it really just comes down to, starting from the outsides and working your way in, kind of like a bracketing system, if you will. So yeah, just want to share that with you guys. Videos would probably come more often if I got some questions or video topic requests. Just throwing that out there. If you guys want me to speak on something, please let me know. I would be more than happy to take on requests. So if you have any questions, drop those below. And then for video requests, you can comment or tweet me at Camille A. Singer. That's all I got. I will hopefully see you guys next week if I don't devolve into another pit of madness and responsibility. Yeah. Bye.